You should not wait to be a leader. You should not restrict. You should not refrain. You should just accomplish what you feel you have inside yourself. When I joined Baker McKenzie, the managing partner at the time was a woman. And she had gone through a tough time herself, being introduced to the firm by the lead partner at the time as a paralegal, because he was afraid that the man in the partnership would not accept her. So she joined as a paralegal, eventually made her way discreetly and with his support into the partnership, and eventually, because she was the best fee earner and the best and the most successful client getter, she eventually became the managing partner of that firm in France. And she took some of us under her wing, and she taught me three things. She taught me how to dress, address, and redress. You will remember that. Dress, address, redress. There's something about how you dress. I know it sounds a bit corny, but I'm sorry to say there are circles where you have to dress, there are circles where it's okay not to dress, but you have to sort of align with what impression you want to project. If you walk in a boardroom one day and you wear, sloppy clothes and it's not, you're not paying attention to yourself, it will induce the idea that maybe you're not paying attention to the file that you're working on or to the draft resolutions that you're going to support. So I think that how you dress actually matters. Second is how to address. And this is something that you learn here. You do not just sports. You also do lots of things it's about theater, it's about giving speeches, it's about standing up in the assembly room, it's about saying what you have to say and doing it so that you can be heard, you can be listened to, and you can be understood. So how to address, depending on whether you speak to an auditorium, a small circle, a round table, an assembly room, is going to be different. But all the time you're going to not so much pay attention to you, although mind what clothes you wear, but you're going to pay attention to who you address. So I come to my final one, redress. This is something which is hard, but it is something that I have experienced in all the different positions that I've had. Very early on, when you are in a leadership position, when you exercise power and authority, if it is the case in that group, you have to take the action that demonstrates that you have identified the weakness and you're going to take action. If somebody is not playing by the rules, if somebody is talking behind the organization's back, if somebody is deliberately offending the mission on which the group is, out. And it's not an issue of showcasing power. It's an issue of sending a message that there are rules, there is ethical principles, there is a group discipline that works and that everybody has to respect. The IMF, as I said, is an architect. And as an architect, there are things that you can do. You can open a window here, you can close a door there, you can put more bricks somewhere. So we take advantage of that position to actually audit the role of women in those economies and figure out whether there are discriminations, whether there are impediments, whether there are obstacles, whether there are biases that stop them from having access to the labor market, to starting up a business, to accessing finance. And that's for the advanced economies. In the low-income countries, what are the obstacles to young girls going to school, to them having proper sanitation equipment and have some privacy, to their mother being able to use proper transportation where they will be safe and secure, and so on and so forth. So we do that as we audit countries, and this is something that did not exist before my time, and I hope it will survive me when I go, that women participation in the economy is of macro-critical importance. I was challenged in the early days of my job at the IMF in 2011. I heard many board members say, women in the economy? This is not macro-critical. I said, wait a minute. Do you know how many women actually work in the economy of Botswana, of Mali, and India, Canada? Generally, the answer was no. And typically, those countries, actually 80% of countries around the world, have in their legal system discriminations, barriers that prevent women from either inheriting in the same way as their brothers would, from owning property as their brothers would, from being able to use that as collateral to access the credit market, from taking a job without the authorization of a tutor, be it the husband, the brother, or the father, and on and on and on. Now that seems a bit, radical and rich, because you live here and you were brought up here. But even in this country, there is what we call a woman participation gap. You have few women participating in the labor market. If it is by choice, fine. If it is not by choice, that's an issue. We need to dig a bit more, because if women were to join the job market, if they so want, then it would probably guarantee increased and better growth, and certainly improve productivity. In the same way, there is a wage gap between men and women. On average, significant one. That's because many women decide to take part-time jobs and generally grow in their career development more slowly than men. But even if you took at the same level, with the same background, with the same career development over the course of time, you still have a wage gap between men and women. Is it fair? Of course it's not. So I contended that it was macro-critical, and now the board is not challenging it, and it's become almost fashion of the day to declare oneself a feminist. It's that we all have to do that. Bring women with us, help them, encourage them. Around the world, you take 189 countries. Only 2% of banks' CEOs are women. 2%. Only 25% of board members in banks are women. And that is not bad, actually, and it's not generated out of many advanced economies. It's because of emerging market economies in the main that we have this high number. In this country, when you look at the top 500 companies on the stock market, 95% of the board members are men. So we should not be despaired. We should not be sad about it. We should look at it as a land of opportunities, because the improved bottom line that these companies could have when you join those boards, when you become the CEO, is just monumental. They just don't know. So we have to tell them. In the economic field, I often hear the same point being made. If you bring too many women at the table, if you hire too many talented women as they are, then it's going to be reduced. It's going to reduce the opportunities for men and boys, and that is just not true. That is not true, because when you, first of all, you enlarge the economy, you enlarge the pie. You don't shrink it by making slices smaller. You make it bigger. And two, it's been demonstrated by research that we have done. When you bring more women into the labor force, into an enterprise or into societies, they bring different attributes. They bring different skill sets, different attitudes, their own upbringing, and it enriches the way in which decisions are made. And it just improves things. As a result of which, if measured economically, it improves the productivity of those enterprises, boards, and what have you. And improvement of productivity is not just going to benefit women, it's going to benefit the entire enterprise. So we need to constantly remind our friends that it's not in lieu of or instead of them, it's with them, and it's going to be better for them as well.